down here. We appreciate it. Any questions? Okay, let's move on to 8.2, entrance age requirements policy JEB/JEBR. Dr. Rodriguez.
This is a policy that I shared with the board president, that based on some of the information that we were getting from the campuses, that it was in our best interest to move the enrollment date for our kindergarten students and move that to September the 2nd. So I think it's going to be a benefit to our community and kids.
Yeah. Dr. Rodriguez, when I take a look at that, a couple of things. The change in the age requirement is almost 3.5 months, almost 3.6 months. So what we're talking about is that these students that enroll at 4 years of age are going to be 17 when they graduate. My concern is the maturity level at that point and throughout school. I think, and what I'd like to talk about is the educational rationale for us changing that. I understand that we may pick up additional students because of that, but are we sacrificing putting students in classes that they're not prepared to take?
Absolutely.
Ms. Mangino has an early childhood certification, and we've been working on that. Ms. Mangino, you want to respond to that?
First of all, I just want to say that it's a parent choice. So the age limit here is, it's not required that parents put their children in at that particular age. They can't, if they choose to wait the following year, that's fine. This was done just because there were a number of individuals, and the number of 6 to 8 individuals whose students had been to Head Start for 2 years. They didn't want to continue on the 3rd year. We had a number of people that asked to move that age to get these children into school. So that was the change there. Again, it's a parent choice, and we do a lot to assess these students to make sure that they're ready, at least educationally, and then leave the remainder to the parents.
The number of parents that were in that category that were in preschool 2 to 3 years and wanted to get it, how many of those? How many parents were there?
There were 6.
6 parents.
That's when they had three good
How many of those actually took advantage of that change?
I'm not sure.
Then the other thing is the policy. I mean, I'm not sure that we're following the policy procedure by just changing it like tonight. I mean, if we change this tonight, are we following the policy governance? It seemed to me like in the past, whenever we had to change a policy, we had to present it at one meeting and then act on it at the next meeting. So if we're acting on that, are we in compliance with the policy governance?
We are. That does not necessarily mean that those steps have to be followed. It can be done as need be.
Then why have the policy?
Question, but I don't want to interfere with you.
No questions.
Okay. Officers, would you please remove that one, please?
Who's that?
Whatever behind right
I just
there.
asked why you have the policy?
You don't have an answer or what?
You don't have an answer?
Thank you. Thank you.
Your enrollment's down so low, you gotta get some kids somewhere.
You
They're all
can
leaving.
remove the gentleman.
You said out the door, that's where they're going,
And
out
what
the
happened to
door.
my warning? I thought we were warned once.
You guys are a joke.
Straight back to the newspapers, guys. Everybody hit me up, minor hit, I'll let y'all know. Unbelievable. The only thing that's worth anything to you people is your paychecks. But sorry enough, you three don't even get paid to follow that code.
Madam President, the question I was about to ask was, I noticed the ad was already in the
As president, I can do that, okay? Dr. Rodriguez came to me and asked me it was a need that had to be addressed, and I gave him the.
Because he needed students.
The policy has to be approved by the entire board, that's the way I understand it.
Address that.
Excuse me.
The information that we acted on was based on providing the service to those 6 families, and that's why I made the request to the board president, and that's what we acted.
I believe that if we have individual families who are requesting an exemption, that perhaps a family could request an exemption in writing, and based on the analysis that Cody talked about, they go through and they analyze the student to make sure that they're ready, be able to handle that, then do them on an individual basis would have been the way to handle something like this. But this sounds like we just changed the policy before we changed the policy, and that doesn't seem right to me. Yep. You should have been here.
And my take on it is that we had a need that had to be addressed. We had families that needed to get their children enrolled, that they were tested and they were voted on. Thank you.
I agree with Cody's analysis of the fact that they were tested and so on. I'm not talking anything about that. But what I'm talking about is policy. If we would have put an ad in the paper that said if there's families that are interested in looking for an exemption, please come to the district office or apply or something. But it sounded to me, what I read in the paper was like the policy was changed and we had to change the policy. And that's what threw me for when I read that.
Ms. Bertolino?
Can we go back to that, to the second or third reading? What's the pleasure of the board? We can do that. We could take it, we could use this as a first reading, and then we can take it for the second and third. It's up to you, whatever you want to do. We can adopt it tonight, or we can go and do the series like first, second, and third.
I think we should follow our process, whatever our process is. If it's first, second, and third, we should follow it. But again, I think we need to make sure that we're not doing things outside policy. You know, like we've got a $1,000 spending limit. We say, well, let's just don't do it this
You
time.
know, I mean, there are provisions, I mean, if it's an emergency kind of situation or different kinds of.
What's the emergency?
But I think, you know, I think this is, we should treat it that way.
So we'll do that, we'll just,
You know, it's the way Paul is suggesting that we.
so what we'll do is we need to amend the agenda and put this down as first reading. Okay? So can I have a motion to amend the agenda? Yes, we're under information and under consideration.
As a matter of discussion before we amend it, let me just ask Tony, what does this do to these families that want to go ahead?
That would be my question to you all. So where do we stand with the students right now?
Put those 6 in.
I mean,
That's all it is.
why can't we go ahead and deal with them on an exception basis?
That's what I'd suggested, that if we have an exception where a family's been in Head Start for X number of years and they're asking to move on, and they ask for an exemption, that's different than just opening up the doors and saying, hey, come you all.
Well, then let's
There
amend
were
it as a
studies
first.
done to say that the
Okay,
kids.
that's been a warning, please. Would you please,
Oh,
officer, would you please remove the...
Christ, Charlene. I wanted to stay, they.
Your opportunity for public comments was at the very beginning, I'm sorry.
No, they had a study that said the kids were too young. And now they changed it back 10 years ago. You're putting, oh, forget it. It's talking to a bunch of
One of the things I'd like to see, President, is that these students have had 2 or 3 years in program, that we have some consultation with those programs to see that in fact is that team would be able to, and just determine, is that part of the process? Okay. In order to determine whether those students, that 6 families, if those students were 2 years, 3 years in Head Start, preschool, consultation with that agency to see if that student in fact had mature to the level of coming to kindergarten. Would that be part of the process?
I would think it could be.
We're going back to that, and we talking about making this the first reading to make the change. I'd rather see us say, if we want to do something by matter of policy, it's an exception rather than a rule. That if somebody really wants to do this and they go through the analysis that Jack and Tony just talked about, and then they apply for an exemption and put in a letter, we can grant it. I still don't think it's a good idea to change the policy and just open up the doors. And then anybody, it's just going to open it up too wide. And the other part I'm concerned about with that is we have agencies within our community that already provide this service for that age group.
But again, it's up to the parents. The parents make the final decision. We
Yeah, I agree.
don't.
So you get the exception, like you say, get the letter, the parents want to bring their kids and they test into kindergarten, granted,
Yeah. But again, I don't think we should change our policy and do it, just make the exemption.
Yeah. But in order to,
One of the things that I've been, because I'm the community, I'm the community law, and I talk to a lot of people, and one of the things I was saying is that it's not only a day decision to take a student from preschool to kindergarten, but it's a lifetime decision to allow that student, like as I said earlier, is mature enough to when they graduate or throughout school. And you take a look at kids from 17 to an 18-year-old kid, there's a lot of maturity done in that 1 year. So those are my concerns. My concern is for the student, and I truly mean that. But so I think that if the parent makes the decision, and we have this exception, if this board decides to do that exception, personally I'm not in favor of it, but if that's what the board should do, then we go that way. But I think again, it's a lifetime decision for that parent, for that student.
and Jack, I'm one of those students that started school early, and like I say, it was well taken, I graduated at 17, so it was no big deal.
So was I, but I look back at it, I would love to have you in your high school.
I started late, we didn't anything different.
Okay, so the board then, what we're going to do this as
I
a,
agree with what Paul said. Let's just go on and deal with it and bring it in approach.
and just add the exception to
The
it?
exception, let's
Okay.
keep the exception deal separate.
You understand?
Is that what you said, Paul?
Basically, yeah, just leave our age, let's don't publish any age differential or anything like that. If the parent's interested enough and they want to come and do it, they come and apply to do it. But let's don't advertise this.
But doesn't that have to be part of policy? I mean, you have to put that in there. We're going to have to put that exception in the policy.
Now she wants to follow the rules.
Because then if not, it's going to become random. So we're going to have to put something in writing. So this policy, one way or the other, is going to have to be rewritten.
Well, why don't we, Joe, just go ahead with the exceptions that we make for these 6 families. Let's table this for right now and come back with a rewrite with the provision to accommodate those kinds of
One of the
situations.
things that we do, we belong to CASB, and CASB does the policy governance. I think we should take advantage of their service to find out what we need to do as far as regarding changing the policy.
They probably have one.
Maybe.
And the other part is, if you're going to change something that's affecting this particular age group, we have providers out there in the community that work with that age group. I'd like to have their analysis brought to the table too, so as we do this, we're getting input from all entities, from those people who feed into that area and those people that have those students at that age too, with their analysis as well. So I'd like to get some input, so it's a broader thing as we make a decision, so we're well informed while we do it.
Can I just ask Ms. Mangino, what is the process for a student coming from Head Start or whatever to actually be required to go into kindergarten? What does it entail? Who's involved, all the entities?
Tony, would you go to the mic?
Sure, yes. Sure.
What happens is that we have a community screening, and that community screening involves those young students going through a screening with a kindergarten teacher, and they're assessed on their readiness skills. And by readiness skills, I mean they'll look at their ability to identify letters and sounds, their ability to identify numbers, their ability to count. It's all readiness skills. And the screening was developed with Head Start in mind and COG and the kindergarten teachers. It was a collaborative effort. And the tool is a research tool. It's a screening, it's an informal tool, and that gives us an idea of whether or not that student is, and I'm going to use this term in quotes, ready for kindergarten. But we have to remember the most important person is the parent. The parent determines, is my child really ready for school? Now we have a cutoff score and a cutoff time for age, and we have to consider a number of variables. But again, I want to continually say, it is up to the parent as to whether or not that child is ready to enter kindergarten. There's no law about kindergarten entrance and the age. Do you have questions?
Let me just ask this, Tony. Going this route, we are consistent with state law, right?
Yes.
Okay. And how is that enabled? How is that addressed in the law?
In the law, it addresses the age for first grade. A student has to be so old for first grade, I believe, Larry. But the law doesn't address the age for kindergarten. And I can get more, clarification on that. But
Ms. Bengino?
yes,
I was going to say, I think what it says, Larry, is that you can't, if the student's not 6 years old by October 1 or something,
I think it's-
in first grade, you can't go.
Right, recall that.
Yeah, that's what.
But in terms of kindergarten, you're saying
it's not
and
there.
So you're suggesting that it be at the discretion of the parent
I'm
in their judgment?
Well, I believe it's in the hands of the parents. If I had, my own particular child, I would have to look at whether or not he was ready, he or she was ready to enter kindergarten by my evaluation of him.
Okay, thank you.
But they can't go back.
Ms. Bengino, at the age then is definitely at the discretion of the school district for entrance into kindergarten.
I believe, I'd have to look at that.
Well, let's table it. I'd like to suggest that. Come back to it.
We're on 8.3, the STEP agreement with TSJC. Any questions, discussion? Very positive.
Do we have any information as to how many kids are engaging in this? Is that under the STEP agreement? Do we have any idea of the numbers that are taking this up? Is Ms. Pachicha here?
She's here. Ms. Pachicha, could you answer that question for Mr. Carnes, please? Do you have an idea right now?